You've landed inside Launch Street, the Business Innovation Podcast, where we interview top innovators out there shaking things up so you can innovate, differentiate, and get further faster. Since you're here, we know you're the type of person that recognizes the importance of unlocking your innovation advantage so you can compete and win. And now, your host, the person that has worked with leading companies like Disney, Procter & Gamble, Aero Electronics, the U.S. Army Research Labs, and Red Robin on upping their innovation advantage. Tamara Gontor.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everyday innovators. You know, it just warms my black heart to know that people like you are out there making an impact and using our tools at Launch Street, all of our resources to help you go further faster. Thank you for that. Now, I want you to get the most out of this community and our resources. So if you haven't already, go to our website and click on the individual training page. Get access to the tools and resources that will help make innovation easy and impactful for you. Make sure 2020 is all about relevancy, competitive advantage, and winning. It's like a high voltage dose of innovation right at your fingertips. Link is in the show notes. Now, on today's podcast guest. We've had him on before, but his business results have been so impressive that we wanted to ask him back so that we could dig into what his company is doing to continually stay ahead of the curve. That's right. I'm talking about Jeff Platt, the president of SkyZone. We discuss their global strategy for growth, how to adjust to change, and ensuring innovation stays a priority when things are moving so quickly. We'll also put in the show notes, by the way, a link to his previous episode so you can go back and listen. Both of them are just chock full of innovation goodness. All right, on to it. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm looking forward to having you back on and hearing what's up with you and SkyZone.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. It's been a couple years, so excited to be back.
Yeah, I can't even believe it. Time has gone by so fast. So for those who are new to Launch Street and haven't met you yet, give us one thing that we'd be surprised to learn about you.
I think something that's always surprising for people knowing that I grew up in Los Angeles is that I'm actually a diehard hockey fan. A fanatic, actually. And I mean, I think part of it is I grew up sort of in like the Wayne Gretzky era of coming to LA. So hockey began to get a little more popular. But I've been a huge fan since I was a kid. I played hockey. I actually worked for the LA Kings, the hockey team here, for a couple of summers in college. And most people in LA that say, oh, you're a hockey fan, you must have started following them after they won the Stanley Cup a couple years ago. And it's like, no, that's offensive to me, actually. I've been a fan for
How
25 years. Yeah. And there's not many of us because ice is not a big thing in Southern California.
Not so much.
But I am incredibly, incredibly passionate about the sport.
Okay, so here's my silly question for you. So I grew up in Northern California where you don't really need a jacket, really. Maybe there's a little bit of fog, so you need like a fleece or something. But did you have hockey gear to go to the games? Because LA is kind of warm all the time.
Warm all the time. So what I would do is I'd always wear a jersey, but I wouldn't put the jersey on until I got into the arena. Because you go from 75 degrees out to like 55 inside. Yeah. So you end up wearing something different inside than obviously you do outside. And I get so nervous during the games because I'm like so passionate about every moment of it. So
that's great.
Like I need like an extra layer underneath.
Right.
Yeah, but I love it. It's such a great game. It really is.
It is. Yeah, it is. I have to admit, I don't watch it regularly, but every time I've either gone to a game or watched it on TV, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I will admit I have a hard time following the puck. It moves so fast.
It's tough.
Compared to, I grew up watching football. So compared to football where you're like, here's a play and then you're done. Here's a play and then you're done. In hockey, it's just constant motion.
Yeah, and that's the problem with hockey is that you got to like really understand the game to want to watch it on TV. Yeah. It's not conducive to television. And so that's why it gets a bad rap. But I think I think even non-hockey fans would tell you playoff hockey is the greatest experience in sports.
Why is that?
I mean, it's just on another level of energy and intensity in the playoffs, and more so than any sport. I also think that in hockey, unlike basketball, for example, if you get down a goal or two early in the game, it's hard to come back from. Whereas basketball, you can be down 25 points, you can take 3 quarters off, and you can come back in the fourth quarter.
Right.
And so hockey, you're getting a full 60 minutes of game from the players, and an intensity that is just the checking and the hitting that is just like, it's like nothing else. So you definitely need to check out a playoff game.
I know the thing I'm not supposed to say is I love the fights, but I do. I know that's like the horrible thing to say.
It's entertainment. It's entertainment. It is at the end of the day.
Well,
but most people don't know this about hockey. There's a code behind fighting.
Go on.
It's not just two guys getting out there and deciding like, okay, we're going to beat the hell out of each other. They actually, in hockey, you ask somebody to fight, and the other person gives you permission to fight with them.
No.
There's all these YouTube videos you can watch of how fights start, and you'll see two guys line up next to each other and say, do you want to go? And the other guy says, yeah, let's do it. Good luck. And they'll kind of like stick tap each other, and then the puck drops and they fight. And so there's a code behind it, and sort of a respect thing that goes along with it that most people, they don't see that. They obviously just see two guys pummeling themselves with their fist. And so they think it's barbaric. And I understand that, but there's a code. It's really fascinating. There's a lot of history and culture.
Oh my gosh. I cannot wait to watch my next game now. I have a whole new lens to look at it through. And I know this is going to sound like a leap, but I'm going to translate what you're just saying into lessons in business. And I think at SkyZone, you've done this really well, but in what you're saying, it gives me a whole new way of thinking about hockey. But what I'm taking out of it is also that you've got to really understand your landscape, like really know what's happening to actually engage in the rules of the game. So I'm watching, like for hockey, and I'm thinking one thing's happening, but another thing's happening, it turns out. And the same, I think, applies in business. Like if you're not really paying attention to what's really happening in your marketplace, you're actually playing the wrong game. Did I just totally leap there? But I feel like it transitions well.
Well, I think you definitely leaped there, but it makes total sense. So I appreciate the parallel. And I think it's also, there's like another element of that, which is like scenario playing, which is you could be planning for one thing to happen and something totally different can actually end up happening. And not unlike hockey or other sports, you have to try and think, 5 or 10 feet ahead, and where's the play going?
Right.
Where's the market going? And how do we adjust on the fly, because things don't always turn out the way you maybe want them to.
So let's talk a little bit about that. So the last time we spoke, SkyZone was crushing it, and you still are. But what I'd love to understand is, what have you done since that last time to ensure that SkyZone is staying relevant to customers? Because I do think in a lot of businesses these days, we see it where they hit this pinnacle and then they get comfortable or complacent, or the marketplace changes and they can't stay up there. But you guys have consistently done that. So talk to us a little bit about how you've done that.
Yeah, I think people always ask me, what's the pros and cons of franchising a business? And we could go on and on talking about that. But one of the pros, which many franchisors might view as a con, is that you have an entire network of franchise owners, which in a lot of ways are like shareholders that are constantly keeping you accountable to results. And in this case, they're pushing us constantly to not be complacent. And I'd be lying if I said we never got complacent. I mean, it happens. It's happened to us. You naturally, sometimes you're not pushing as hard as you need to. The good news is, in a franchise system, if so long as you give franchise owners the platform to do it, they're pushing you on their behalf to say, what's next? How are we innovating? How are we going to stay relevant? And they've done a really good job, to their credit, of constantly making sure that we're feeling the pressure from them to stay relevant and constantly be thinking about what's next.
I just have two questions on that. One is kind of what's percolating in the back of my mind is, how do you ensure that you're staying connected to your franchise owners? And for those of us on Launch Street, I think the question applies to any of us who have teams in the front lines, right? Whether that's franchise owners or, kiosks that are staffed at a mall, or just a team that's all over the building. So I'm curious, Jeff, how you've done it.
Couple ways. And I think this is super important. And I think your parallel of teams is right on. We have hundreds of franchise owners. And so it's, realistically, it's not possible for us to touch every single one of them very often. But the one way that we definitely do is we actually have what we call a franchise advisory council. And they are 7 elected members by our franchise network, whose responsibility is to make sure that the issues that are pressing to our franchise owners are bubbled up to that council. And we are on the phone with that council on a monthly basis, on a scheduled conference call. We are in person with them every quarter for 2 straight days meeting. And that council is really the voice of, as you said, kind of the front lines. And they're there to make sure that the issues that need to get bubbled up to us, they do through that channel. And there's two other ways I think are relevant, which is, we have an annual conference where everybody comes together. And that's, there's nothing like FaceTime. I mean, you can have phone calls and conference calls, but, and technology is great, but I don't think you can replace human interaction in face-to-face. And then we do a lot of regional summits or regional training, we call it, where we're out in the field once or twice a year, and we bring regions together for different training on different, things, initiatives that we're working on as a company. So there's several touch points of how we engage down at the field level with our franchise owners.
So this is really cool. So you emphasized when you're talking about the advisory council, the word elected. And I know this probably sounds like an obvious question, but I want to kind of have it as a springboard for conversation. Why is the fact that they are elected so important to that equation?
Because at the end of the day, they're representing the needs of all of our other franchise owners. And if we elected them, if we, the franchisor, elected them, they become our people, not their people. And so it takes, because they're supposed to be representing another group of people, that group of people should be the ones electing them. That is always the way it's been with us. The only person that is put on that council that is not elected is what we call our franchise partner of the year. So it's the person that we stand up and say, this is our best franchise owner that we want to recognize for the year because of growth, unit results, team collaboration, living our core values. That person automatically gets a seat. But I think if you asked any of our franchise owners, they would say we absolutely believe that person should get a seat, deserves a seat.
I love that you talked about that, because I think anytime you're dealing with, and I was just having this conversation with someone about innovation, that when you as the leadership decide, here are the 4 people responsible for innovation, for new ideas, for pushing the growth of the company, you minimize everybody else on the team, but you need enablers, you need communication channels. So I love what you said about being elected, because that really changes our versus their people and makes it much more inclusive. Yeah.
And which is important in a franchise network, because, you're naturally going to have disagreements with your franchise owners, no different than you have disagreement with your teams or your shareholders or sometimes your guests, your customers. But a safe space for people to sort of air their differences, talk about what's important, gain alignment on directionally where the company's going and what we're focusing on, and make sure it's what franchise owners want us to be focusing on. It's like anything. It's really important.
I want to ask you about the customer side and how you've stayed relevant there, because you're in the business of experiences, and you hear on the news in particular a lot how extreme we're getting in experiences. Like people who do Tough Mudders are now doing the 24-hour, overnight in the dark Tough Mudders, and people who take selfies are falling off cliffs because they're trying to take selfies. Like you hear all this crazy stuff. How do you make sure that what you're providing is continually meaningful and relevant and the place that people want to go? And I know that sounds like a silly question, but the experience, it's like this game of one up that we keep getting ourselves into.
Totally. And that makes our jobs stressful and exciting, and puts extra pressure on us to make sure that we are constantly rethinking what it is that we put inside of our parks. And we do it in a couple different ways. And the one thing I'll say to start is that people, the world loves experiences now, and everyone's talking about it, and they have been for years. And so, we love the space that we play in, and there's so many different venues popping up that offer different experiences, whether it's a pop-up museum or VR, whatever it may be. But the thing that really no one talks about, which is surprising to us, is so much entertainment is now being brought to the home that less and less people, when people say, who's your biggest competitor? I pull up my iPhone, because I say that's our biggest competitor, because there's just so much that you can access for entertainment on that phone that doesn't require you to move outside your own 4 walls of your home. So how do you create an experience that makes people want to get out of their comfort zone and get off their phone or get off their TV to experience something new and fresh? And so there's a couple ways we do this, and I think we've come a long way, and I think we can always be better in this area. And but it's a couple of things. One, we do have a group of people that are like super passionate about keeping a pulse on what's happening out there. And everyone always says, well, where is out there? And we say the world. We're not just talking about what's happening in the US. In fact, we get inspiration from all over the place, and a really easy. And so someone says to me, well, what do? You fly people around to Asia to look at like new concepts? No, we don't need to. Okay, that's the benefit of social media, and it's the benefit of YouTube, because there's all these things happening on YouTube that you find people who've now become influencers who are doing crazy things like in their backyards, for example, that we say, hey, how do we build an attraction out of that?
Right.
So you have people that are like building things in their backyard where they're like jumping on different surfaces to slam dunk basketballs. And so, we've done that with trampolines, but now we've created an entire new, what we call a sport court, which is it's essentially a giant mattress, if you will, that you can play different games like soccer or basketball or volleyball or dodgeball even on. It's like a less intense trampoline, but it's easier to move around the surface on. So we find inspiration in a lot of different places. YouTube is one of those places though. And simply looking at influencers who are doing crazy stunts and saying, how do we bring that inside?
I just love what you're saying, that like looking for that inspiration and maybe not in all the obvious places. I was just listening to a report on the news this morning talking about how on YouTube, one of the big things this holiday is watching people open up their holiday gifts and the surprise from opening up the box.
Yeah.
And so we're all watching these other people open up boxes. There's millions of views to these different videos. And the toy companies realizing, hey, we need to build in that like feeling of surprise into our packaging, because that's what people are really looking for. That doesn't actually mean they keep playing with the toy, but they're finding their inspiration from YouTube a little bit like what you're saying. And I just think it's fascinating to look in these places that maybe you wouldn't normally expect to look.
Yeah, and you can sometimes find gems. We in fact, this conversation's timely because yesterday down the street from our office, Nerf set up a pop-up, a Nerf challenge pop-up where you go and different fields that you play Nerf on, kind of like paintballing. And, I went with a couple people from our team and our innovation team, and we went and just experienced it. And it wasn't because we sat and said, okay, we're definitely going to put Nerf in our parks and we're going to create, but it was more about being there, playing together, doing something different, and what ideas, spawn from that. And is there stuff that we see there that maybe we like this, but we could do a different twist on it and it could work in our environment? So, yes, it's looking at the digital side and the YouTubes, but then it's also getting out there in the world and experiencing all the new experiences, if you will, that different brands are putting out there, is another piece of it.
One of the things you mentioned is, your competition being more than other experiences, but it really being your iPhone, or Netflix or, whatever, right? Staying home basically and bringing the experience to you. How do you think about overcoming those type of competitors when they're not your typical ones? They're not the ones that you're used to in your field.
Yeah, it's really an interesting question. And the reality is we just have to be so different. That's why, like, one of the things that we're focused on is physical activity, because you're not going to really get that at home.
Right.
And so how do we ensure that the experiences we're doing are not things that can be easily replicated in your own home? And how do we make sure that they're active? Because something we hear a lot, which is another part of innovation and staying relevant, is we listen a lot. So we listen to guest feedback. And one of the insights we just got from a recent research project was mom and dad love the physical element of coming to a SkyZone. They like that their kid is getting active and moving and engaging with friends and sweating. And we've known that for a long time, but it's good to kind of continue to validate that that's top of mind for consumers. And mom doesn't like when their 12-year-old is sitting playing on their iPhone.
Yeah.
And, that's not something that she loves. And so we got to continue to play up the physical part of the experience as much as we can.
Yeah. I think I was telling you offline, I have 11-year-old and 15-year-old boys. And nothing drives me crazier than an afternoon at home where they're sitting on their phones, because it just, like, I know, and actually we have we have an Oculus Rift we just got, and that's awesome and fun, but it's still not, right? I mean, they're standing. That's like the next level at home, but that's it. That's all they're getting. And I'm constantly seeking ways to get them out of the house and active. And it really is a challenge. And I think what you're saying is so important for us to really remember, that it's about, though you said it, it's about having a reason for them to come and being different and unique enough that they can't get that experience at home. I don't have to go to the movies anymore. I'll just wait for it to be. And my TV at home is actually much nicer than half of the experiences in the movie theater.
And your living room's probably a lot cleaner than a movie theater. So
oh my God, I hope so. And nobody talks during the movie. Like there's other benefits.
Right. And you can pause it when you want to. And, yeah.
But so the movies, right? Movie theaters are really struggling. And in all honesty, with their new reserved seating, I'm much more inclined to go. But now that you can recline them, I then fall asleep. And now I'm thinking I'm paying to nap. This is ridiculous. Right. So, I mean, you have a young kid, you go to the movies and you're like, oh my God, it's nap time.
Right.
But I just wanted to take a moment and just appreciate what you're saying about the fact how important it is to really give people a compelling reason to shop with you, experience you, whatever kind of business you're in. I think that makes a world of difference, and why part of the reason why SkyZone is so successful.
Yeah. And especially, and this just happens to be, this is beneficial for us, but there's so much attention over the last decade around obesity, especially among youth. And so it is top of mind for parents, but it's hard. And we recognize this. It's hard for parents to pull their kids away. And by the way, it's easy for parents to let them just play on the Oculus Rift because it's convenient and there's no way about it. It's
all the time.
Yeah, right. Time is it's a finite thing, and it's like eating healthy. Like everybody wants to do it, but it's more convenient, unfortunately, to eat unhealthy, and so it happens.
Yeah.
And so we recognize that, and that's a challenge. That's a challenge.
I wanted to ask you about something specific that I think you do really well. I read a couple articles about this and was really impressed by it. You do a really good job, or SkyZone does a great job of adjusting to the culture you're in. Mm-hmm. And I think oftentimes in business, we think, whatever it is that we're doing is 100% the way we're doing it relevant to everybody around the world. Right. And it's not, right? Different cultures have very different personalities to them. So will you talk a little bit about how you've done that?
It's kind of, from my perspective, it's fascinating to see different cultures and what changes we have to make to our brand. And, some brands I think are right. They think if it works here, it works there. And, no, it doesn't. There's a couple things that come to mind for me. One, here in the States, our birthday parties typically are, you play for an hour and then you go into a party room and you're in there for about 45 minutes. You do your cake, your pizza. And, at that time, parents are ready to pull their hair out and they want to go.
Yep.
And we have some locations in Mexico, and parties in Mexico are a big deal, and they are not a 1 hour occasion. They are a 3 hour occasion.
Oh.
And people want to sit and they want to relax and they want to enjoy their time in the room and they want to socialize with other parents. And so, we had to adjust how we operate our entire birthday party program to accommodate what is a very different culture in terms of how they look at birthday parties. And so what was a 1 hour event is now a 3 hour event there. And that's, you have to think of, how do I engage people in the room? How do we make sure that we build enough party rooms in our locations so that we can accommodate that? Capacities are different. So that's that was one major cultural difference in Mexico that fortunately we knew going in because our partner there told us. They just said, look, this 1 hour party thing will not work.
Right.
Or you take Australia, another market we're in, which, I think Australians they're cool and they're edgy. And they're more extreme, frankly, in nature. Yes. And so when we went into that country, they said, look, we need to amp things up a bit. We want performance trampolines here. We want wall running. And we said, no, we don't do that stuff. This is, the average person that comes to a SkyZone is not capable of running up and down a wall with their feet and bouncing on their back. And they said, well, right, we believe that the average American isn't, but the Americans aren't the one coming. Okay, this is Australia. Right. And so we had to change our product mix a little bit there in terms of the attractions we offer. We went more extreme to kind of appeal to the local demand of the consumer that's coming to those parks. And I think the last one, which is, like something that I never would have really dreamed of, is in Saudi, where we have some parks. One thing was, 4 or 5 years ago, we opened the first entertainment venue in Riyadh that had ever been opened, which was really cool. But we also opened venues that are women only.
Yeah.
Because we did some women only events at some of our parks, and they were wildly successful. Huh. And so our partners there said, we're going to open some parks and they're going to be women only parks. And they've been fantastic. But that's, I never would have dreamed that we would do a gender specific trampoline park or SkyZone. That's I would have never thought of that. So you've got to adapt to the cultures, and that's why it's important that you pick a partner that's really in tune with what's happening culturally and how their cultures are different than ours, and you've got to make sure that you're flexible enough to make those changes and not be, for lack of a better term, I guess, pig-headed to say, well, it works here, so it's going to work there.
Right. Well, it's a balance, isn't it? On one hand, you need to be flexible enough to adjust the market you're in. I 100% agree with that. Yet on the other hand, make sure you're not reinventing the wheel or starting from scratch every time so that you can't scale your business, right?
Exactly. And not being too far from the core of what you do. But you've got to have some flexibility. Or just don't expand internationally, because it's just, it's different cultures. I mean, if you're not prepared to do it, then don't.
I'm looking forward to going to the one in Australia then. That sounds amazing.
It's a lot of fun.
Next time I head to Australia, I'm going to head over there to SkyZone. What do you think has been your biggest challenge as you've grown the business? Because particularly in the last couple of years since we talked last, and how have you dealt with it? And I want to ask you this from two perspectives. One is from I think a larger business growth perspective, and the other one being from a more internal, as the leader of the company, kind of from a leadership perspective.
Yeah, I think so. A couple things. One, since we last talked, we had an ownership change. We were acquired by a private equity firm who had actually acquired some competitors of ours and merged us all together, and which was a big sort of cultural change and kind of left all of our franchise owners wondering, well, what's going to happen with the business? And wait a minute, we have some of our competitors that are now part of the company, and we have multiple brands, and so it was an interesting sort of situation to navigate. But ultimately, what the end result of that is we consolidated some of our industry and made the overall organization much bigger than it was. And we're able to better coordinate where we'd be putting locations in parks so that we wouldn't end up on top of each other. And what also came from that was joint learning about things that maybe we didn't do well that another one of our brands now does well, and vice versa. And, how do we collaborate more? How do we learn from each other? How do we take the good and the bad? And so that was a very interesting situation to navigate. It's been, it must have been after our last interview, because it was at the very end of 2017.
We didn't talk about that
almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's been almost 2 years since that happened. And it's an adjustment for everybody. It's, anytime there's some sort of merger or acquisition, people naturally get a little tense, and what does it mean for me? And so navigating through all that has been definitely challenging, rewarding, and a learning experience all at the same time.
Now, if you don't mind me asking, did you merge just on the back end, meaning operations, logistics, or also on the branding front end side of it too?
More on the back end. So our brand is remaining and continuing to grow, and then two others that had also been acquired and rolled up. Those brands are remaining. And so we essentially have three brands, and a big part of what is happening now is what's go forward brand strategy. Where's the growth? Where's the white space? Which brand? So it's been exciting. It's definitely been exciting, but there's the positive of it is, as I mentioned, there's a lot of learning that comes from when you look at somebody who used to be your competitor, who naturally you kind of go, they don't know what they're doing because they're the competition and they're bad at that. Then you get you become partners with them, and you realize, I'm actually pretty good at that. Maybe there's something for us to learn here.
Right. Oh, wait, never mind.
So yeah.
Well, the mindset has to shift, but you said something really important that I'd love to ask you about, which is you said, that's a lot of change for people to deal with. Mm-hmm. What does it mean for me? What does this happen next? Where's my security or what's my growth potential now? Or how does it change? Maybe even the cultures, right? So if you've got different cultures that come together just on the organizational level, how did you help walk your company and your team through that change? Because that is, I think we talk about these things as these big case studies, but in the reality, it's change is very personal for people.
Yeah, it is. Change is personal, and naturally, understandably so. Everyone wants to know, what does this mean for me? And on the positive side, one of the reasons why we were a good fit for this sort of overall organization to come together was, our business is predominantly franchised, and so So we were brought into the overall company because they wanted to continue to expand on the franchising side, and there was not a ton of franchise infrastructure in place. So they in essence, the buyer wasn't buying a lot of redundancy in terms of team. So that overall was sort of good and made people rest a little bit easier. But I think the other piece of it is there's going to be change, and change could be big or small. And I think the most important part is you're just transparent with people. This is what you know, this is what you don't know, and this is when you're going to get answers to those things you don't know. And so long as you can be human about it and not try and feed people, for lack of a better term, BS about what's happening, I think they tend to just feel a little bit better about the overall situation. And the reality is you don't have all the answers, when you go through big change like that, you don't. And so you sort of communicate that here's what we know, here's the plan as we see it today, here's what we don't know, but here's where we intend to get some answers and by when. And that doesn't make everybody feel great about the situation, but I found that so long as people believe you're being transparent with them, they just sort of trust the process more.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I think oftentimes we try to feed optimism and platitudes. Yeah. And optimism's great, but when you don't know, you don't know. And you got to figure it out. And it's better to figure it out together.
Totally. And again, just gets back to be honest about the fact that there's some things you don't know. Yeah. And I'll never forget, I made a huge mistake right after this where I told, part of what I communicated to our team was, look, this is going to be business as usual around here. I'm going to work hard to make sure that there are no material changes to how we operate or anything about the company. And the reality is that was not a fair statement to make. Right. Because there were going to be changes. And that was business as usual was not a fair statement to make. And I had some people on our team that brought that to my attention, and I loved that they felt comfortable enough, and they were totally right. And I got called out for it, rightfully so. And it was a good lesson for me. Like, just be over transparent in, things now. Even if you don't know things are going to change, it's probably fair to assume that some things might just change. And so acknowledge that.
And I think that even if you're trying to make a business as usual, even if that's your goal, it sounds impossible anyway. So I have to imagine that minimizes people's trust in you. And you are very fortunate that you have people on your team that will tell you that stuff and be blunt, like, hey, that's not the way to state this, and here's why. I think oftentimes, particularly in large organizations, they're afraid to tell the leadership that, but it sits at the water cooler, just to date myself, because we don't really have water coolers anymore. But you know what I mean? Like, the conversation happens, but it happens almost behind your back because they're afraid to go to you.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I wish I could say, our office is one where everybody feels comfortable bringing anything to my attention. And I only hope that's the work environment we have. The reality is it's probably not the case with everybody, but I think most people here feel that way. And I think, again, it sounds so simple. And if, you hear, when I say it out loud and you say, yeah, of course, but just being human is just, you're just another person on the team. Yeah. You may be the president or the CEO, but I'm just another person on the team. And if I can be that to everybody else and I could just feel like their neighbor that they sit next to, I think it makes for a much more open, transparent, collaborative environment. It's like our office. People always say, where's your office? And I point to the corner desk that I don't have an office. I sit out in the open, and people say, yeah, but where's your office? And I say, right there.
Do you really? Do you sit out in the open?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, how come?
A couple of reasons. One, first and foremost, why do I need an office? I mean, why is my work more important, or do I need more privacy than anybody else? If I have to be on a private conversation, I can do what everybody else in the office does. I can go grab one of our conference rooms and I can sit in it. Two, I think that it makes it such that we're all equal. No one's above anybody else. And I respect the fact that some people just work better in offices, and some people, most of their conversation has to be private. So there's a convenience factor. So I respect that. But I like being out in the open. It also gives me more of a pulse on sort of like what's happening. I can overhear a conversation that people are having and maybe talk to them about that later. Or in turn, people can overhear a conversation I'm having and talk to me about it later. So I like the feel of an open space more, and it comes with its challenges. I mean, it absolutely comes with its challenges, and not everybody likes it. I mean, it's true.
Yeah, it's funny. I struggle with open workflow just from a distraction perspective, but I really appreciate what you're saying, particularly about being in the pulse of it. And I'll tell you, when I was vice president of this company a while ago, back when I actually worked for other people, I had when we moved offices, we had this whole swanky new building. They offered me this huge corner office. And I actually took this little alcove in the corner that was really in the open space, but just gave me a hint of more quiet just because of where it was. But I will tell you, being basically out in the open with everybody was a huge benefit to the work that we were doing and the relationship that I had with people. And we created this little Sasquatch doll that we put on our desks, and that meant don't bother me like I'm doing deep work right now, because that's the challenge of open space, is that constant conversation, at least for people like me who need to focus. But that, I think your comment about being in the pulse of things is really important for those in leadership to pay attention to. It's not just, look at me, I'm part of the team, but you're really actually hearing the conversations as they're happening, and you're not 10 steps removed from the work. Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's just critical, and it's hard. It's, for CEOs or presidents of companies, you don't always get the sort of raw information, right? Sometimes things are sugar coated when they're brought to you, and so if you can figure out a way to get, what is really happening, it's important. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I learned the power of headphones in open office spaces. That's what I've discovered.
Yes.
Headphones and music. Like, that's what I need now.
Our one of our finance leaders sits next to me now. He just moved his desk about 30 days ago, and he started to work with headphones on more and more. And the other day I said to him, "Should I be offended by this?"
Do not want to hear my voice.
Yeah, totally. He says it's totally for me. Okay, I just need it for focus. I said, okay,
that's fair. I have this subscription to this thing called Focus at Will, which is music, and it's music that is scientifically engineered to increase productivity and creativity and all that stuff. And it's like, so it sounds like classical, but they have different stations, and it's put together in the right way. And I love it. But the founder of the company was telling me that the reason they're doing so well is for open office spaces, so that you can drown out the people and maybe not listen to Beyonce where you start to get into the music, but have something, to stimulate your brain, but also drown out everybody else. And that Focus at Will has become my best friend in open office spaces, for sure.
Yep. Yeah. So you should let me know what that is. Maybe we'll start blasting it like in the hallways. And stuff.
Yeah. I'll email you the link to it. They're fantastic. Yeah. It's actually great. And I actually gift it to people who work in open office spaces, not for me, but at other places, who are struggling with the distraction, because there's something in the music that makes me super productive and focused, and I'm not listening to everybody else. It's like a double win. Before we run out of time, I did want to ask you about your commitment to do good in those initiatives. Will you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, for years now, it's been always important for us to give back to the community in some way. And we do that on sort of various different levels. Our franchise owners are creative in their own way and how they might do that locally. We do it nationally every year with American Cancer Society. And, we do charity events as a corporate office throughout in the LA area. We do, it comes in all forms for us. It's not just one thing that we typically do. And we've got a new one coming up that we're super excited about. And we haven't publicly announced it, so I'm hoping this doesn't air until after. But what I can tell you is that we formed relationships with Big Brothers Big Sisters, the organization.
Oh, yeah.
And we're doing a really, really cool giveaway with them in January. That is one of those things that it's you can. I love that we have a company that we're able to do a lot of fun stuff with and give things away and donate to cancer research or whatever it may be. But every once in a while you come across one or you hear something one of your franchise owners does. It just gives you this really good feeling inside, and they all give you a good feeling. But sometimes it just I don't know, you connect with something a little bit more than maybe something else.
Yeah.
And this is one of those. And the thing that I love about it is, not only this partnership, but it's kind of how it came to be, which is somebody on our marketing team who really had nothing to do with creating this idea. They weren't tasked with, okay, what's this initiative going to be? But they thought of this and they said, hey, what if we did this partnership with Big Brothers Big Sisters, and here's how it would work, and give you a little insight. It's going to be kind of Tom-esque in that we're going to be giving something for every something that is purchased. We're going to be giving something to a little. And I just love everything about how this came to be. It was a great example of somebody coming up with an idea that had nothing to do with their day job, raising that idea up the flagpole, then somebody, really just buying into it and running with it and making it happen. And it's just one of those I feel good about every aspect of how it came to be to what we're doing in January. And we're super excited about it.
Well, Boys and Girls Club is a wonderful organization. So congratulations on the partnership. And I look forward to hearing about it when it goes public. And we'll make sure to air this at least at the same time, if not a little bit later, so that you don't get in trouble.
We'd appreciate that.
Yeah. But that is wonderful. And I do think, that we talk a lot in branding about how it's important to have a why, and people want to know the story and they want to know that you're part of the community. And I do think it's really important as a company, from both a personal and a business perspective, to find those things that you're passionate about, or maybe more importantly, and I guess this is really the story you're telling too, is that your team is passionate about.
Yeah.
And finding ways to weave that into your business. That's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, and it's, I think if you can get ideas from people within your organization that maybe have nothing to do with what they do on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That's really, that's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting.
That's true innovation.
Yeah, I agree. It's great. Before we close out, where can people go to learn more, connect?
Oh, I don't know. They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm somewhat active there. They can go to skyzone.com. They can listen to this, Google, anywhere, but definitely visit one of our locations and parks. And one of the coolest things we just launched, actually, if they want to visit us in the middle of the ocean, we just put a SkyZone on a Carnival cruise ship that just launched a week ago. So that's fun. So that's super fun.
I think I need to go test it out, see what it's all about.
Definitely.
Jeff, this has been great. What's your final piece of advice for everyday innovators here on Launch Street?
Oh, whenever somebody asks me that question, I feel like I have the same answer, and it's always just go for it. I think we get too bogged down in, should we do it? Should we not? What does the data say? What is you just trust your gut, go for it. And, because I'm a hockey fan, I love Wayne Gretzky, and, he said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And I believe that. I really do. I think you just got to try it, and you're going to fail, and you're going to get punched in the mouth, and that's okay. You learn from those experiences, but just do it. It's so cliche, but go for it. See what happens.
Jeff, I think that's a great way, or a great note to end on. So thank you so much. It is wonderful to hear how great you're doing, and to get some of those insights for the rest of us of how to really think about building and growing a business that's so relevant to the people that they serve.
Thank you for having me. Next time we talk, I expect to hear about your playoff hockey experience.
I'm totally going to watch.
Thanks for hanging with us on Inside Launch Street. If you know someone that is truly ready to unlock their innovation advantage, have them join you on Launch Street. Discover your innovation advantage. Build a team of high-performing innovators and ignite ideas and solutions that create massive impact. GOTO, launchstreet.com. Remember, innovators, if you don't take the leap, somebody else will.